probably the most challenging year in the history of, higher education. And probably one of the ignored voices were the voices of TAs. And so while the TAs are the closest to students, in a way, they are the face of the university, and they have a very, very important role in shaping the student learning and the student experience. So I think there are valuable sources of bottom-up knowledge, of contextual knowledge. And for that, we're grateful to invite a host of star TAs and have a conversation about what happened, last year, and what's their future thinking. But before that, let me thank our CTAIL manager, Maddie, for organizing this event. Let me go straight to the star-studded lineup of star TAs. Our first speaker is Iman Abdullah. She is a teaching fellow in macroeconomics at University of Warwick. She's got her PhD from University of Manchester. She's a labor economist, and she has taught at every level. She's taught macroeconomics, quantitative economics, and economics for business at all levels. Our second star TA is Stefano Cellini. Stefano is a PhD student at the University of Surrey. His research focuses on health and environmental economics. In terms of teaching, he has done microeconomics and statistics to undergraduate and postgraduate. Third speaker, Aoife Horan. She's got her BA in Trinity Dublin College, her MSc in UCL. And after graduating from, MSc at UCL, she started to work at the same department as a course manager, teaching assistant, and a research assistant. She has also experience working at consultancy. And now at the moment, she is a consultant at the Financial Stability Division of the European Central Bank. And finally, we have Ahmad Saad. Ahmad is in his third year of PhD. His research focuses on economics, labor market imperfections in South Korea, the intersection between the technology and automation. He joined UCL last year as a TA, and he's been teaching a variety of courses covering, more than 300 students. And last year, he won the Student Choice Awards for Inspiration Delivery among 1,000 candidates. Okay, welcome everyone. It's such a pleasure to have you. Broad depth of covering teaching in different subjects and at different level. So let me start with very general question, and let me start with Iman. What's the best thing about being a TA?
Yeah, thank you for the invite, Raman. I think perhaps the best thing about being a TA is that it can be quite rewarding at the end. I do like that feeling at the end of the seminar when a student would say, "Oh, thank you. I thought the theory was difficult, but I guess not anymore." Or I really like the seminar, it was useful. So I do like that rewarding nature of teaching small class groups. And I guess the second one is that I do like having a different audience every time. And so even though I do teach the same material, say to 5 different groups, I get different audience every single time, and I get a different questions every single time. So I do like this engagement nature, and I also like having an audience, a different audience, and sometimes it can be rewarding. So yeah.
Very good. Ahmad, any thoughts on that?
Hello, everyone. What I particularly like about being a TA is that it provides this transition between being a student and later on assuming your aspiration is to be a lecturer. It gives you this space where you get to learn, perhaps make some mistakes, and you have your mentors around you that help you, that help introduce you into this job. So I like this. It's kind of a safe environment. That's number one. Number two is that I get to learn a lot as I teach. So that's by far my favorite part of being a TA.
So let me go to Stefano. Stefano, if another PhD student, comes to you and say, don't put much time in your TA-ship. It's not going to get you anywhere in your career. What would you say to that person?
Thanks for having us here, first of all. So I'd say that it's kind of a short-sighted statement. And there are two main points in which I disagree. So first of all, many of us in the teaching assistantship, we are also doing our own PhDs, we're doing our own research. And our purpose would be to contribute to knowledge in a way. But the very first way and best way to contribute to knowledge is actually teaching it. So that's the purpose of being in this academic field, is to contribute to knowledge at any level. So spreading it is actually the best way to do it. And secondly, I think even from a utilitaristic point of view, we are by teaching, we are delivering a message, and by kind of training ourselves in delivering the message in the best way, we are acquiring skills that could be great for the job market if someone wants to think of this as a purely utilitaristic thing. So I wouldn't agree with the statement at all.
Aoife, has being a star TA helped you in your future careers?
Yeah, absolutely agreeing with what Stefano said there. You do get a lot of personal growth and development from being a TA, and it can be some really valuable work in terms of what Stefano mentioned. And then, as an economist, as you kind of go through your career journey, it's always beneficial to, revisit those core economic concepts that you might be teaching to undergraduate students. It's always good to reground yourself in that while you are furthering your career. And then, as you said, in terms of you get so many valuable lessons from teaching to the students in terms of your presentation and delivery, connection with people, and particularly as a TA, working more directly one-to-one with the students and understanding how to really engage with them, get them engaged in the material and help them develop through their education.
I'm also keen, I'll get back to this question later on, what about the management skills, the back office part? The TA has to communicate with the lecturer and other TAs as well. And I'll get to that later on. But I'm going to throw this to anyone who could, who can jump in. When I started as a TA, the mentality that I had was that I'm a troop teacher, right? So the mentality of you're as a TA, you're a teacher. You're not an educationalist. But educationalist, being in the business of education goes much beyond teaching. It involves, innovation in assessment, innovation in giving feedback, innovation in communicating with students, writing paper on those, presenting those education projects to other people in conferences, publishing papers in the journals. So, it's much broader than just being a good teacher. And this is the question: what can we do to transform to transform the thinking of role of TAs from teachers to educationalists? How can we push people to rethink TAs as educationalists rather than teachers? Anyone?
Yeah, I think. Well, I think it depends. In my opinion, what I found at UCL is that I enjoyed the flexibility given to me by the lecturers. Basically, yes, there is something we have to cover in our sessions, but the style is yours. Do what you want to do. And this helped me a lot. So I think it's going to be particularly difficult for first year TAs, because they might think that, no, I don't have this flexibility. I just have to do as I am told. So we need to make it clear for TAs that, no, let your style speak. It's totally fine. So I think it's more or less a communication issue. TAs do want to express their style, but maybe the name assistant in the TA is a bit, it pushes you a bit back. But it's just a question of communication, I think.
Anyone else? Actually, good point about the labels. Sometimes labels can really change. For instance, TAs in some other universities are called teaching fellows, right? And kind of sends a different signal. Anyone else would like to jump in on that question?
Yeah,
Ima?
I just wanted to kind of just add a little bit of what Ahmed was saying, maybe because I'm someone who kind of chose a career track in teaching. I think the institutions are already in the right direction, shifting their own views of how we perceive TAs and how we perceive teaching in education in general. And you will see in some of the institutions is that now they do have a career track specifically for teaching, and that college or even a university professor can actually progress in that track. So we certainly need more institutions who have that same mentality of, let's say, if I were to give or to offer more than just delivering that style of teaching, to be part of my, let's say, duties, or to be part of my own title of not being named as, let's say, a teaching assistant, but rather a teaching fellow, and I can progress with that title as well. So certainly we need to have more institutions shifting the mentality of not just having a career in teaching and research, but rather a career in teaching as well.
Very good point. Anyone else? Anyone else?
I can just say that they're striking a very good point. Institutions need to intervene in this. It's sort of a market with imperfect information on many sides, because we, from the teaching assistant perspective, we won't have we won't have rewards from being very good teaching assistants, first of all, and there is very poor knowledge of the on the economics of the education in a way. So speaking of the field, I think that it would be great to have universities and institutions allowing within a certain limit some innovative teaching methodologies from the teaching assistants, and maybe spurring faculty staff and teaching assistants, so senior faculty and the teaching assistants, to cooperate and provide empirical evidence of these innovative systems. I mean, there are RCTs, there are experiments that in economics now we love. I don't understand why this couldn't be applied in teaching on a regular basis in our institutions.
No, I completely agree with you. At the moment, there are these opportunities, career tracks in education, and star TAs. The issue is just connecting these together, just spreading the information out there. Very good. Let me just go to the second part of my questions that focus on the relationship between the TAs and the students. Again, anyone would like to jump in. What's your biggest challenge when you are dealing with the small group? How do you motivate them?
Yeah, I think just looking at my experience, I started as a TA during the pandemic, and definitely one of our biggest challenges in the move to online learning is maintaining that same engagement in the classroom. Much more difficult to do via Zoom than it would be in person. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges that we faced last year, and continuing now with more hybrid learning. And I think there's a lot of different strategies you can use to approach this, and that's one of the most important roles as a TA, is understanding how to give students some real engagement in the tutorial sessions. Particularly when they've moved to online learning, tutorials can be one of the most important places for them to engage and debate and talk to their fellow students, that they might not get those opportunities in other places. So really trying to facilitate this and making sure they're having that environment was a really important challenge that we face as TAs. I think there's a lot of different ways you can approach this and try and maintain that engagement. One thing I know we like to do in our courses, we're just to bring a lot of variety to the classroom, which can be more difficult via Zoom, but it's something important, say, by using polls or different debates, breakout rooms. You still have these different facilities that you can use to kind of create this engagement, bring a bit more excitement to the tutorial classroom for students, where they can really have this engagement with their other students and with you, so you can perform your best as a TA and give them the best kind of opportunities and environment for learning there.
Sticking with engagement via, online, does anyone would like to share us a specific trick that they do in their sessions for engagement?
I like bullying students. I don't like awkward silence at all. I can't wait for participation. The first couple of sessions, I just call people by name, and then it gives them this mindset that they're on their toes. They know that their name is going to come, so they participate on their own when they feel more comfortable. So, to be honest with you, I enjoy teaching online. What I find more difficult is the hybrid. I haven't taught hybrid, but I've been attending some hybrid lessons, and it seems to me like a nightmare, because you're teaching too legible. I mean, in terms of engaging the audience, I don't think that's a big problem. But in the case of TAs, I think the most important part is to have a personal relationship with students. That's the difference between what a TA can do and the lecturer can't do, is that a TA can have a personal relationship with these small groups, and that's a bit more difficult online. If that's manageable, that's totally fine.
Stefano, Iman, do you have any experience so far with hybrid teaching?
I don't, but I can comment on the engagement part of online seminars.
Oh, please do. Show a trick. Share us the trick.
It's just something that I've been experimenting quite a lot last year, and something that I found really useful and it works pretty well is to use polls. So it doesn't have to be something fancy. You don't have to use like a sophisticated polling software. You can, in fact, just use the chat. So what I do, even if it was a question where you require to find just a final answer, I could give them different answers, and I can keep them in the chat. Let's say answer 1, that would be the answer 2, this, and so on. And I ask them to react to the one they think is the correct answer. And this way, specifically for the first few weeks, when students don't feel comfortable raising their hand in an online seminar, or they don't really feel comfortable being addressed by name, this allows, in a sense, some anonymity in the answer. So I know, like, okay, I know that I know the answer, but I'm not quite sure. So putting a thumbs up on A would actually mean like I wouldn't be seen, but I know that there is, like, I participated. So the way I kind of take that polling to the actual engagement is that then I announce which one is the correct answer. And then I go to the thumbs up, or at least like smile faces, or like the hearts that they leave, and say, okay, choose one. For example, David, you identified the correct answer. Maybe you want to kind of talk to the class saying why did you choose 1? And in a sense, it works because you kind of take away that uncertainty that comes with not knowing the final answer 100%.
Yeah. Iman, are you using the polling on Zoom?
Oh, no, so we're using Teams.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Is it incorporated within Teams?
In fact, I do not use any polling system. I just leave the answers as like an answer on the chat.
Okay, and then they vote. Yeah.
They just vote with thumbs up, and they just react to it. And it works perfectly fine. And specifically for the first few weeks, when you gain that confidence, we're saying, okay, I'm friendly, you're also friendly, it's fine to make mistakes. But once they know their answer is the correct one, they are more likely to provide an explanation rather than asking them by name from the start to provide an explanation. The second thing, and I'm just gonna stop in a second, is to use the whiteboard in Teams as well. It's completely anonymous, so whoever writes on the board, you don't know the person. So they're more likely to write something when they cannot be identified. And then you could just say, for example, oh, the one that's graphed, let's say the one in red is actually the correct answer. Do you want to identify yourself to the class? So that's one of the main, let's say, techniques that I used to engage the students in an online seminar.
Very good, very good. Yes, Stefano, show tricks. Yes.
I really agree with the last point on the on being anonymous actually incentivizing participation. And I mean, from my experience with teaching quantitative subjects that can feel abstract sometimes, and sometimes even with the whiteboard, you see yourself drawing graphs on Zoom or whatever platform you're using, and no one really may be actually looking at what you're doing. So I love giving them some tools to have some hands-on experience with mathematical softwares. I remember sometimes I used very basic one like GeoGebra, showing graphs how functions would change, but without having the hand-drawn stuff, but actually making them visualize how changes in a function may be seen mathematically. So this is I go a bit beyond the just solving the problems by handwritten solutions. And
Stefano,
yeah.
yeah, can I mean, follow up, you know, this is a bigger question of how do you engage when you're teaching, you know, courses about mathematics and statistics? You know, I'm very curious, you know, to hear from you and the others. Go on, please.
No, actually, I was just saying that maths is probably the most troublesome because the people really can be shy and feel like providing the wrong solution will make them the worst and be kind of that would make them silent for all the following sessions. So I connect on opposition with what I think was said before about picking by names. I think that would be a bit too pushy, but just solving at whiteboard is admittedly boring. So I noticed that people hate awkward silences, and then I actually stop while solving the problem and ask for what's next and how they would continue. Maybe the first times you have like several seconds of silence, the ones that will stick to the online sessions will intervene at some point. And of course, if they are wrong, you can explain and without being too condescending in a way.
Any other experiences with teaching, you know, creating engagement while you're teaching mathematics or statistics?
I think the closest I got to teaching math was actually quantitative economics. But I guess one way to kind of make it slightly more fun to the students is that talk about the math part, solve the mathematics, and then spend at least 5 minutes after the problem saying how useful is that mathematical techniques in economics. Usually these students are really good in math. They know how to solve the problem. But at the end of the day, how do they make use of those techniques in economics? So for example, if we teach them optimization techniques, it wouldn't harm if even in the lecture to spend 1 or 2 slides saying, how are these optimization techniques used in the different fields of economics? Or even if they do take, for example, microeconomics as a different subject aside from that mathematics, or even microeconomics in the second year, you could, for example, say, oh, this technique is going to be useful when you study microeconomics in the second year and this and this and this fields. It gives that mathematics at least a context rather than just a tool that they're just going to use. And I guess it's not just applicable to mathematics as a pure subject. I think it's also applicable to all of the subjects that are usually heavy in mathematics. So instead of using GDP and solving for GDP, you could actually just compare it to the actual way in which GDP is being calculated in real life. So I think that would be really beneficial to just link these techniques to either the real world or the uses of these techniques in economics.
I mean, I completely agree with you. And on the part of the lecture, to give that freedom a little bit in the tutorial so that they can go beyond. Because, you know, I can understand sticking to a problem set could be a little bit demotivating, you know, for a TA. No, absolutely. Very good. Very good. Now, let's move. We're still talking about the TA and the student part, but, you know, let's go outside of the class. You know, your engagement continues when the class is over through email communications, interaction in a Q&A forum. Again, this is a question. Let me pose this question to Aoife. Any basically tricks on how to, you know, communicate with students on email or Q&A forum?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's important that you're, you know, that kind of midpoint between the students and the lecturers. So it's good to have a slightly probably more casual approach than the lecturer might take. You want to be that point of contact for the student, and you just want to facilitate them feeling comfortable to come to you with their queries that they might be, you know, less comfortable taking in a more formal manner to the lecturer. So I think it's important to kind of keep that kind of casual sense with them, that they see you as someone who's more approachable and kind of, you know, a bit closer to where they're at. You know, you're still in education yourself maybe, so that they kind of feel that connection with you. So I think, yeah, keeping it more casual, more informal. I know when I was working last year and we were doing tutorials on Teams, like communicating by Teams is just a good way to be a bit more casual than, you know, formal lectures. Just, you know, they can have quick questions for you, don't need to draft out a full email. It's kind of having those open channels of communication where they can be more informal with you and have that point of contact.
Amazing. And again, on the lecturer part is that you give a role, it's a division of roles. You give a character to them, right? And, you know, and you can establish that, cultivate that character during the lectures, not just the first lecture. You say, these are my TAs, and then bye-bye, you know, and then I'll do my lecture. So cultivate those characters as well. Anyone else would like to share some communication tricks? What are the things that you can do, the comparative advantage sense, much better than the lecture?
I mean, I don't know about comparative advantage, but one thing my students said they appreciated is that I reply fast to emails. That's something we often take for granted, but that's something as TAs, when we do it, we show students that we care. So as simple as that, just reply fast. As Aoife said, informally, I always end my messages with the "take it easy." So that's what I do. But yeah, I would say just reply fast. That's all.
Anyone else? Clodagh?
I'm just going to butt in because I'm a TA as well. So one thing I think that teaching assistants students find really useful is that they actually can remember normally more than the lecturer, sort of learning the material. So particularly with first year economics, it's been really valuable to have TAs who are not that long out of their undergraduate. So they can remember misinterpreting things. And I think that really helps with the way they communicate, because I think they communicate in a way that the students understand maybe a bit better than we do.
And also collecting the, as you say, common misunderstanding or the things that, you know, students have the most problem with and needs to be clarified. It's, again, valuable sources of bottom-up feedback. Anyone else?
Can I ask a question, Ramin? Because I saw a comment in the chat now also by Professor Jenkins about the switch from online to face-to-face. I'm having a bit of trouble with switching from online to face-to-face in remembering the names of the students in class. That's very important, because as was said before, online I can see the names and I remember it week after week. But during tutorials now face-to-face, I am having a trouble remembering students' names. So if the other panelists or anybody has an answer for me, that would be very, very helpful for me.
Stefania, you wanted to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I know what you mean, Ahmed, and it's so difficult because it's like, oh, I used to call you by names, and now students stop me and they say, oh, hi, Professor Perez, what are you doing? Yeah, of course, you think I know you, but I actually don't remember because there were so many of you. But something that I did before the pandemic when I was doing seminars, I literally took to the classroom some cardboard, so pieces of cardboard, and gave one piece to each student. And I took markers as well. I don't know, you need to check with your university at this stage what is with handing things to students. But I asked the students to make this cardboard like in 3 and write their name or how they want me to call them in that piece of paper. And I kind of every seminar said, do you bring your name, please? And the students actually did. And so I literally had the name in front of them, and it was much easier for me to call them by name. So it's kind of, although I did this before Teams, it was trying to imitate these Teams or Zoom, whatever, with their names.
Yeah, I used to do this exactly from my very first tutorial. Great idea.
I was just gonna say one point before leaving on this. So to be honest, I'm also facing the same problem. I cannot remember the student's name, but there is actually a way to do it. So either when they raise their hand, just ask them, can you please also say your name before you answer the question? Sometimes it helps. And sometimes I actually just print the attendance with a small photo of each person so that if I want to kind of call someone by name, I just look at the attendance list and just pick the name because I mean, I can see the photo and the name as well. So sometimes it works.
I am that creepy person with, PDF with lists of students, I was about to forget that list, in my lecture yesterday, so no, I absolutely do that. Absolutely. Let me move on. So far, we talked about the relationship between the TA and the student, but there's, a whole story of back office, the relationship between the TA and the lecturer and the TA and the other TAs. That is where the true management skill comes in, going beyond the teaching part, you have the other part of management and dealing with other people. So let me go to Stefano. Stefano, how would you describe a good relationship, an effective relationship between a lecturer and a TA?
Well, I like the way Ifa talked about being a midpoint, and I mean, of course, if you're still doing a PhD, you have your own tasks to attend to. So the time management becomes really important in those situations. And I think that an efficient way to do so is to, when the TA is allocated to a module, have, of course, a meeting, at least one meeting, but also a series of meetings to discuss the syllabus of the module, discuss the roadmap of the module, and possibly integrate with each other's strengths. For example, if I'm teaching something on econometrics or statistics, and I'm doing something innovative on econometrics and statistics, you may bring your own knowledge to that, and so integrate this in the main program would be so much more helpful to, yeah.
How do you share this idea in a weekly meeting, or how does it work? How does the diffusion of ideas work?
I think, well, I'm not doing that right now because I think it would be extremely more innovative, and I think this is probably a lacking point in the relationship. I mean, so far, my experience and many of my colleagues' experience, I don't think this ever happened. And for example, when the module is the same as the previous years, probably a tutorial will have solutions from past years, but the lecturer doesn't really recall them, and some slight change may have happened and no one actually spots it. So when the TA just limits to go through the solutions, they would deliver something wrong or something that the students might find, say, not really helpful or not really useful. So I think that improving that that relationship would be great for the student experience and the TA's experience as well. And I think also for the main lecture.
Exactly. We will get to that later on. What can a lecture get out of this? Aoife, an effective relationship between a TA and a lecturer?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have those open channels of communication with the wider teaching team. So I was working within a team that had a lot of TAs and a lot of lecturers. And so really having that kind of open communication right from the beginning. One of the most important things straight off the bat is understanding what are the lecturer's priorities for this course, and kind of say then the pressure points as well. They have so much experience from teaching this course in previous years. And if you are a new TA or new to this module, that kind of information can be really useful in helping with your teaching delivery. So having open communication on what their priorities are for how they want to teach this course and on what lessons they really want to get across, and then where the students are tending to have the most difficulty. Those can be something that are really useful for a TA to have very early on in order to understand how to plan the course and how to teach most effectively. So having regular communication every week on that can be really important. And I know you mentioned earlier, say that bottom-up feedback. So from the TAs feeding back to the lecturers, and can be really helpful the other way as well. So the lecturers have knowledge from previous years, say how Stefano was saying on what the solutions were in previous years or where students had difficulty and things like that. So making sure that feedback is going both ways to really best prepare the TAs for delivering these sessions can be really important.
Ahmad, going to you, what is the most important support that you want to get from your lecture?
Support, you mean in terms of for my teaching duties?
Anything. Let's go wild. Anything. Teaching, administrative, anything.
Well, as I said earlier, when from the professor or lecturers, I look at them as mentors. So what happened for me last year was my first year at UCL, so I was completely new to the teaching team. But as Aoife rightly said, we would meet on a weekly basis, so that was very important. But another thing I did was asking students, how are the lectures going? So this gave me an idea of of the different teaching styles we have at UCL, or in a certain module. But I think for me, a star lecturer, if you want, is somebody who cares about teaching me how to teach. That's number one. And number two, a thing I noticed last year from the lecturers I work with is that sometimes they're even more excited than I am to teach. Even though it was my first year teaching, I should be very excited, I should be very stressed, etc. I would see on Microsoft Teams or an email at midnight almost from a professor talking about a small thing in a lecture, and this for me is something I have to respect because I know they have their private lives, etc. So this is what inspired me a lot, just to see that the lecturer really cares about his or her job.
Iman, the support that you want to see from a lecturer?
I guess I'm already seeing the support. Stephanie is actually the lecturer to macroeconomics. So I think she's already doing a great job in setting meetings every year and having a team for the teaching team in economics. So what type of support? I would say I'm already getting the same support. So thumbs up. But I think also having or sharing at least the same enthusiasm for the subject and the same enthusiasm for teaching is actually the one that as a TA you would hope to see in any lecturer or anyone who's delivering the material.
By backward induction, Ahmad is not getting the support from me.
No, absolutely not. This is going to get me fired, this conference.
So, Stefano, any thoughts on that?
No, I think they covered pretty much all of it. But I think, and probably you will want to cover it. I think that how the relationship between TAs and lecturers run could be addressed by the institution itself. So putting in place a system that kind of allows for these relationships to be in place, it should be the main objective of the institution. And I think they can do even more to do with say aspiring teaching assistants or lecturers overall.
I agree. I agree. Institutionalizing this is very important. You know, the weekly meetings, institutionalizing the communication. Now, last part, and then we'll open up to the floor. Please, you know, if heads up, if you got any questions, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand. It would be even more preferable. Raise your hand and open up your mic and ask it. But let's go beyond, right? Let's go beyond. And so at the moment, in a sense, the industry is gradually waking up. You know, there are a lot of efforts from different institutions, Royal Economic Society, European Economic Association, American Economic Association. If there were to do one thing, what they should do, apart from, you know, increasing the pay, you know, improving the pay. So what do you want them to see, you know, doing for you? Anyone would like to jump in? Aoife, any thoughts on that? Sorry, before then going to Aoife, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I was being a TA is my full-time role, so it was interesting. I didn't have that balance between, say, doing a PhD while also being a TA. So the others might have different perspectives on that. But I think what we've been talking about already, and really giving TAs that independence and I don't know the word, like giving them kind of really some control over their work and really being able to shape and guide the education they're giving to these students is really important for just feeling motivated in your work and feeling valued. And I think like that's something I really enjoyed when about teaching, being a teaching assistant, and that's something that could be brought out even more in these institutions and kind of further structured to make sure that that's available for TAs across the board, that they feel independent and motivated to be able to really manage their own work. And that can be really important for motivating people to stay within teaching and to enjoy the work that they're doing. So
flexibility. Anyone else, how to motivate if you want to be more, you know, concrete?
Jump in this question. Yeah, so basically I think that from my perspective, I'm doing both research and teaching. I think that at PhD level, probably there is really too much focus on publications, do good papers, publish a lot, as much as you can, but there is no highlight on how good teaching practices can be meaningful for your future career in academia, especially. So, given that the AEA or EA have brilliant names that are both good researchers and good teachers, I think they're promoting some seminars done from these top members of these associations could be inspirational, of course. I'm not saying that someone would emulate them to achieve the best result. There is no one size fits all in this, but these could be incredible sources of inspiration from different contexts: the US, UK, other European countries, Asia. It'd be really great to have voices from top people in the departments from all over the world, and see how they adapted, especially after this pandemic.
Talking about the teaching and education.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And anyone else? I mean, this is another issue. I mean, thinking a little bit industry-wide is to prepare the pipeline. Again, going back to these are opportunities coming up, you know, education career tracks, and these are the start TAs, you know. How can we connect these together, you know, much better? Anyone on that?
I just want to echo what Stefano was saying. when I started as a TA, I did receive some like TA training at a departmental level and at a, let's say, school level when I was a PhD student in Manchester. And I know that there are same, let's say, training available from the economics network. It will be really nice to advertise these ones, or at least to run these on a larger scale in the RES and so on. So it will be really nice to kind of at least give like the TAs an idea of what are the do's and don'ts in a small classroom teaching. And so while we wouldn't say, okay, you need to pay TAs more, but I guess if these sessions were to be advertised in the RES conference and any other major conference, I think funding for PhD students to attend these might actually be a priority. Not a lot of PhD students who are also TAing would have the opportunity to present in these conferences. So it wouldn't make sense to advertise these sessions where not a lot of students who are already doing TA would actually be able to come to these conferences to begin with. So while I wouldn't, I mean, obviously I will still promote getting like higher wages for someone who is doing a TA. I would also at least promote getting funding for those sessions, or at least to attend these sessions if they were to be advertised in these conferences.
So can you just explain a little bit more on those sessions? They are not training, correct?
So obviously, as far as I know, there are, so what I got in Manchester were actually training sessions. So sometimes they would give us like these situations, like if you were, for example, in a classroom where the classroom is double booked, for example, how would you react? Sometimes it's like a cause of nightmare when you go to these sessions. Or it could be that you present something and the students are already puzzled. How would you react in this case?
So there were more training sessions.
More training sessions. And it's also like I've seen now with the RES and all of these like large conferences, they do offer like, in a sense, like master class in like certain either like divisions. So why not have the same master class in, let's say, economics education? How do we react if we were found ourselves in a position, let's say, to teach mathematics? What are the best practices to teach mathematics? Yeah. I mean, the lecturers are doing great job in kind of communicating with us. But at the end of the day, the lecturer teaches this large class teaching. And the more they teach these lectures, the more they're going to forget the actual skills needed to teach these small classes. And so you want to hear it from someone who's actually doing these classes. What are the things that work and what are the things that don't?
Pretty much in spirit of what Stefano said.
Yes, exactly.
These societies can disseminate the best practices, the role models who have been doing this. Sometimes you need to see it to believe it. If you see a role model who's being, had a meaningful career out of doing this, it impacts you. Someone else on that? Anyone else? Maybe something that comes to my mind is sometimes going to the education conferences and presenting your innovations as a TA. Sometimes you can give an interesting input to a lecture. Honestly, when I was TA myself, I had no clue. I thought that TA-ship is about being a charismatic teacher who's good with students. I never realized that there's a whole new set of, another world of education, and maybe push the TAs to get involved in that, to see them more as an educationalist rather than a good teacher or a charismatic teacher. Any thoughts on that? Okay, anyone from the audience would like to raise a question?
I'd like to raise a question, Ramin, if you don't mind. So last year, as Aoife said, we're working on the same team in introductory economics, and we were quite a big team. But so as part of our work, I would say the communication between TAs, I mean, there was not much to be discussed between TAs, I would say, except for our weekly meetings. Is there something to be done to to increase this cooperation between TAs on a certain module, perhaps also that at the end of the day we reward a TA team. So for a certain module, I don't know how to increase this cooperation between TAs on one single module.
Anyone from the audience have a Clodagh? Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, so I think there's quite a few modules in ECL Ahmed that don't have the weekly meeting that we had. And they have worked best when TAs have organized themselves. So particularly on the master's program in our first year or the first term compulsory, I'd go downstairs to the common room and I'd see groups of TAs working out together what they were going to do. Because it's quite, I mean, aside from the support that the TAs get from each other, from a student perspective, getting a consistent experience across the TAs as much as possible is really important. So I do think if you're in a situation where there's multiple TAs and nothing is coordinated by the lecturer, then organizing something around that's quite important. I mean, I've always TA'd on my own when I was a PhD student, and that was quite isolating, but at least I shared an office with other people. So I'd bounce ideas off them. But I think like being remote, and particularly if you're not a UCL PhD student and you're coming in to teach, there's all sorts of reasons why you might not feel integrated in it. And I think, but yeah, even as a group, I mean, using things like Teams and stuff, even this year, we can see a bit more engagement from having a smaller group of TAs this year is helping a bit with that coordination. But, learning from each other because you are the ones in the classroom is really key.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just to add that actually at the department level, we have basic TA team side. So from time to time, you will see actually the TAs, they share experience with each other there, or answer these questions there. And for the larger modules, because I'm teaching both Econ 02 and Econ 04 applied economics, so both are super big modules. For my applied economics, I know that some TAs, because we have quite a few TAs, they have this informal WhatsApp group for them to communicate with each other, especially. I still remember when I do the term 3, when they did the initial marking, they will, because some TA are not very confident about their own marking, so they will communicate with each other what's average with marking in their groups. So I think they kind of consider this peer support. It's very helpful for them.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just want to kind of add 2 points. So here in Warwick, we have a senior tutor who oversees, it's like if you have any issues or if you have any doubts, you can actually refer back to the senior tutor in the teaching team. And we also have something which is teaching observation group. So we have like smaller groups, let's say consisting of like 4 or 5 people, where you can shadow each other's teaching. So I can attend someone else's teaching and I can see their practices and they can come to mine as well. And in the end, we can just write like a small report. I mean, obviously it wasn't compulsory, but it's a nice way where we can actually communicate with anyone who is actually teaching in the department. So even if you do not have such thing in your institution, maybe it's nice to create one. You say, okay, if I do come to yours, you can come to mine, and can I come to yours? So, yeah.
So Iman, I think you said whatever Stefania wanted to say, right? A good example of a chemistry between a lecturer and TA. Stefania, would you like to comment?
Oh, actually, that was, and I was about to say, if of course we organize that at Warwick, but if it's not organized in your university, literally if you have a friend, come and observe me, because actually your friends is going to be much less critical than the students and just give you not nice comments for the sake of being nice, but constructive comments about your teaching and how you are working. And that helps a lot. I wish if anything I did different was to ask more people for support and help to come and observe my teaching and go and observe teaching.
By the way, amazing efforts in institutionalizing it. The issue, I mean, if you look at it, university-wide, these are very short-term contracts. So there's an incentive issue right? How can you, you're in a 1-year contract, you don't have much incentive for a long-term engagement. So the trick is to create these institutions that could keep the knowledge and accumulate the experience, at least at the departmental level. So, and we saw very good examples of that. Okay, final thoughts from 4 of you. I'll go rounds and final thoughts, and we'll close down the session. Stefano, final thoughts.
I would like to share the experience from myself on sharing a module with another TA, which is not something happens so frequently in smaller departments where you usually are the only TA of your module. And with what Claudia was saying is that, I mean, either you have this institutionalized way to cooperate with your TAs, or you will feel really on your own on these teaching duties. And it happened to me that once I had this module shared with not only one from my PhD cohort, a very good friend of mine, but also we had the same supervisor of the PhD as I was. So basically, we are very friendly, on very friendly terms, and it improved a lot how we dealt with the solutions, where sometimes we found the solutions themselves a bit hard to understand, or how to deliver the module, and what students were more likely to ask. So I think that these cooperations are crucial.
Okay, 30 seconds. Final thoughts, Iman? You're mute.
Oh, I just want to kind of thank you. It was really a useful session, meeting everyone and sharing their ideas. So,
Ahmed?
Yeah, same thing. Thank you so much. I learned a lot from the other panelists, from the participants, and thanks a lot, boss. Thank you, boss. Don't fire me.
Aoife?
Yeah, thank you everyone so much. It's been great. We learned a lot from this session, and it's such a good review to look at the role of a TA and what we can really do to get the most out of it. So it's been a really great session.
And as a final word, I thank you all, especially, for the participant and also our 3-star TAs. Thank you for, taking us into the trenches. Take care. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.